CTV News at 5 with Hudson Mack.
Well, joining us now to discuss this further is Esquimalt Councillor Dave Hodgins, also a former Assistant Deputy Minister and Provincial Fire Commissioner. We saw him in Andrew's report. Dave, thank you for being here. Is the problem that there are too many jurisdictions? Who should take charge of this thing for the province?
That's part of the problem, absolutely, Hudson. And I think, it's important at the onset to state that it's not about blaming people for what didn't happen. This is a real opportunity to look at how we can do things better going forward. And it's interesting when I'm listening as we're getting ready for this interview, much of the news is about disasters and being ready for disasters. And certainly our friends to the south have learned so much, and they're ready for the storm that's coming their way. So worldwide, we're dealing with more and more disasters, and it's going to happen here at home.
Andrew's report, Dave, you mentioned that there are hundreds of communications experts in the province in that communications bunker. Is that the best? How do we best deploy them, and what's the quick fix here?
Well, I think what I was focusing on during that interview was the fact that we need to have a one government approach to response for disasters. When I say one government approach, I'm talking local governments, I'm talking the federal government involvement, our provincial government's involvement. We need to be holding hands and doing this together. And when you hear of things happening over the weekend with gaps in the system and communication challenges and people not being in the loop and not having good information to make decisions, that's a flaw, and that needs to be dealt with. And for communications, and certainly communications is a significant issue and challenge in any major emergency event. But what I'm saying is, when you look at the resources of the provincial government, we have a lot of people working in provincial government with a lot of skills and abilities. So why wouldn't we, in a one government joined up approach, train people to be able to step in a moment's notice and provide that help? I mean, if I'm out in a community in a remote area and there's a disaster coming and I want to call for help, I don't need to get a voicemail from somebody that says, I work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, call me back.
And had there been a wall of water on Saturday night, it would have been so much different.
Oh, my.
Yeah. Dave Hodgins, we appreciate you taking time to join us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the improvements as we go forward.
All right, we'll keep an eye on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The storm has done a lot of damage already. Here is some of it blowing over the top of this construction crane in New York City, dangling 65 stories over the streets of Midtown Manhattan at a luxury high-rise, the tallest residential building in New York. Nobody was injured in this. Work on the Midtown site had already been halted by the storm. Sandy, as we mentioned at the top, has been downgraded to a post-tropical storm, making landfall in New Jersey at about 5:20 our time. Let's check in with our Astrid Braunschmidt, who is following the storm track as she gets back with us today. Astrid, nice to see you.
Thank you. A great day to be back. We've got lots to talk about. This storm, as you heard a little bit earlier, has done exactly what forecasters expected it to do, turning inland, turning northwest and west-northwest into the New Jersey area. So we want to show you some images from Atlantic City, from New Jersey. You can see just how much wind was coming up into Atlantic City. The storm surge overnight tonight and through tomorrow could be anywhere between 3 to 5 meters along the eastern seaboard. So that's quite intense, along with those very strong winds. The storm may have been downgraded to a post-tropical storm, but we've got gusts well over 130 kilometers per hour. And so taking a look at how this has developed through the last 12 hours or so, you can see it is a very big storm. Some of the effects being felt more than 1,000 kilometers away from the center, from the eye of the storm. That's going to push all the way up into southern Ontario, southern Quebec, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, all expecting heavy rain, strong winds over the next 12 to 24 hours. So this is how Sandy is expected to move over the next little while. Now we will keep an eye on this, but those bands of rain and those strong winds already being felt in some parts of Greater Toronto, and those gusts tonight could be up to 100 kilometers an hour. We certainly know what that feels like here on Vancouver Island, but this is a superstorm that they are experiencing in eastern Canada tonight. Hudson.
Astrid, thank you.
You're welcome.
Check back with you in a while.
Okay.
BC Ferries needs to cut $26 million out of its budget over the next 4 years, and the province would like to know from you where it should start. Public consultations are being held in coastal communities to discuss service levels, fares, and what route to take moving forward. BC Ferries says it remains committed to viable solutions and finding a way to bring ridership up and costs down.
I think that what the minister says is they're open to listening to what people have to say, and they're different, being innovative and flexible going forward, because we have to have a ferry system that's sustainable over the long term. And BC Ferries has always had to be all things to all people. And the question is what type of service do people want in the long term? And we have to have the flexibility to be able to provide that service. We have a big fixed cost system here, and we have ships, once we build them, they're there for 40 years. So we got to get this right.
BC Ferries has already reduced sailings on the major routes between Vancouver Island and the mainland, and a 12% fare increase is coming over the next 3 years. For information on the community consultations, where they are and how you can take part, go to coastalferriesengagement.ca. Companies bidding on the contract to build Victoria's new bridge have another 2 days to polish up their proposals. The city says the proponents have asked for more time, so it has extended the Blue Bridge deadline by 48 hours. 3 candidates are competing for the project, which has a $66 million budget. The deadline to submit the proposals for the new Johnson Street Bridge is now 4 o'clock on Thursday. A man charged with manslaughter following an attack outside a Colquitt pub that turned deadly will remain in custody until December at least. Greg Brotherston has been remanded in custody until December 6th. He appeared in court by video link today. Brotherston was charged after a man punched 57-year-old Rick Green outside the Country Rose pub earlier this month. Green died a week later. Brotherston is also charged in a break, enter, and robbery at a West Shore home and faced those charges in court today. Brotherston's lawyer has waived a preliminary hearing in that case and will seek trial by judge alone. Staff at the Harmac Pacific Mill in Nanaimo practiced their emergency preparedness today, and if you were in the harbor city, you probably heard it. The horn blew and the Harmac employees evacuated the mill site as emergency responders practiced their response. The evacuation drill is an annual event. The mill says in the wake of this weekend's earthquake and tsunami alert, it's good for mill operators and the staff to know what to do if disaster strikes.
Well, to make sure we're prepared in case there is an emergency, in the event of something like an earthquake, as an example, it could potentially rupture one of our vessels and create an atmosphere where we had to evacuate people from the site. We do a post-op on it. Once the scenarios are all done, we have groups that are observers, and they will come back with their reports, and then we'll recap what we found and identify areas that we did well in and areas that we need improvement in.
Today's drill simulated what would happen if a rail car filled with chemicals ruptured during a natural disaster, such as an earthquake. Well, closer to home is a group of students getting all tricked out for Halloween, pulling a few surprises out of their sleeves a couple of days early. These are the fine arts students at Colquitt's Middle School who broke out into a flash mob today at exactly 8:20 this morning, part of an early Halloween celebration. Colleagues were surprised as the students were rocking out to Time Warp.
Students are really engaged and they have a blast. They really like doing the choreography and the singing and the actions and singing with their face. Choir is a big thing here at Colquitt. So.
I just like being on stage. I like the spotlight. I like people looking at me. It makes me happy.
I really like it because it's almost like performing on stage. It technically is, and I just love that. It's fun to be performing and just entertaining people.
The students say they practiced their Rocky Horror routine for a month before showing off their flash mob moves to their fellow students this morning. A 20-year-old man is recovering in the hospital after a shooting in Courtney. RCMP say the victim required surgery after being shot in the stomach Friday in the 600 block of McPhee Avenue. Investigators are still looking for the shooter, described as a man in his 20s with an average build. RCMP say the shooting was not a random attack. They don't know if the victim and the gunman knew each other. BC's finance minister is crunching some numbers in Nanaimo and asking people from the Harbour City to help him work out some of the math. Mike DeYoung arrived in the city today, preparing for a telephone town hall tomorrow night. The finance minister says it's his way of finding out where you want your tax dollars to go to determine priorities for next year's provincial budget.
It's tough to talk to everyone, but the virtual town hall will provide upwards of 40 or 50,000 islanders with an opportunity to speak directly with me, provide their input into the budgeting process, tell us how important it is for them to secure a balanced budget and how they would address affordability issues for families.
Randomly selected people in Nanaimo will receive a call tomorrow with a recorded voice asking you if you'd like to take part in the conversation. And if you do want to, stay on the line for further instructions. The next provincial budget will be introduced in the legislature in February.